where we're going to start to fire things up, hit the solution room, address some of the problems of getting evidence into practice. Just as we do that, for us as panel members, then it would be great for us to know, we're going to do that hands up thing. So put your hand up if you're in clinical practice. You can be in more than one category, okay? So put your hand up if you're a student. Great to have you guys here. Put your hand up if you're an academic. And put your hand up if you're in health service management. All right, put your hand up if you haven't yet, put your hand up. I think, we only had one person miss out, so that's a pretty good effort. Look, you know most of our panel, we've introduced them. We've got from JBI, the Director of Transfer Science, Dr. Kylie Porritt. We've got the Executive Director of Nursing Workforce Patient Experience, Associate Professor Amanda Clark. The Dean of the Adelaide Nursing School, Associate Professor Frank Donnelly. And our keynote speaker from this morning from University of Melbourne, Postdoctoral Research Fellow, Dr. Marlena, Klaic. So it's great to have them. We're going to get onto your questions, but first of all, we need to test this panel, stress test them, see if they're up to it. So here we go. I'm going to get your microphones ready. We're going to start with a series of questions that have come from registration, but I'm calling them myth or fact. Short answers only. All right, the first one, myth or fact. Leadership and clinicians are not on the same page with EBP.
What's the last part of that? Regarding?
Evidence-based practice. Leadership and clinicians are not on the same page with evidence-based practice.
Are not on the same page? I was going to say that would be a myth. I think at the core they are. It's just they have some.
Okay, Amanda, myth or fact?
I'm going to fence it. Depends on what you're trying to do. I can give plenty of examples of either side, to be honest.
Fair enough. Okay, question number 2 in our warm-up session. Myth or fact? Clinical implementation lacks appropriate incentivisation. Marlena, we're going to start with you. Myth or fact?
Yes, I'd say that's a fact.
Okay, Frank, is that a myth or a fact? Clinical.
I would say it's a fact.
Okay. Oh, somebody really nailed the questions. These are awesome. Myth or fact? Clinicians are resistant to change. I don't think that came from a clinician.
Not my nurses here in the car. I don't know who you mean, but it's not nursing.
Okay,
I think that's a myth, definitely. That's as in not true. I don't think they're resistant to change. I think nurses, everyone has changed all the time.
Yep. Okay. Right, we're going to do one more just because they're uncomfortable right now. It's good. It's a good place to have your panel. Myth or fact? The status quo is more of a barrier than an opportunity. You're going to have to think about that one, but you don't have long. The status quo is more of a barrier than an opportunity. Myth or fact? All right, you've had your thinking time. Frank?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a fact actually because I think having done some recent work around the capacity and willingness of people to change in certain things, and I'm particularly thinking about your professional learning at the moment. It's not so much that people don't want to change, but I suspect there's a lot of people who actually don't know how to change. And so there is a desire out there, but I'm not sure that the mechanisms and frameworks to enable that change are well understood.
All right, what do you reckon? 10 out of 10 so far? If you think they're great, give them a round. Well done, panel. All right, we're going to move now into the core questions that came from everybody in this room as you registered. And as I said at the start, a lot of these are related to access, tools and resources. So we'll start with you, Kylie. What's the best way for busy clinicians to identify and become aware of what is considered best practice?
Is that working?
No.
No. I'll just talk really loudly. The best way, I think, is to partner with and work with people that can that are doing those resources and develop those resources for you. So Amanda and I I think we were talking earlier about how it is not the clinicians. I don't see it as the clinician's role to be able to search for the literature, critically appraise it, understand all the complexities around whether it's a trustworthy piece of evidence. But I think teaming up with people who can actually do that for you then increases your accessibility to those resources.
Terrific. Amanda, do most clinicians know they have access to evidence already?
I think they know, but they're not aware of what that means. So for us here in Carlin, we've got OWIs or policies and procedures that are used all the time by our staff, multi-D and across the organisation. That is a resource. When that resource gets updated, it is an expectation that it gets updated with evidence-based practice and the new relevant information that is needed to drive that care type forward. That's a resource in its own right.
Yeah, that's a fascinating observation. Kylie, how could we close that gap further?
Look, I think we have to make it easy for people to access information. I think if it's, if you have to do 10, 15 clicks in order to get the answer that you want, then that's too hard. So I think we have to really be working together to understand how people access information at the point of care, and then make sure that we are delivering, we're able to better deliver those resources, understanding their needs in a way so that we can deliver the resources that meet that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Frank, as a leading academic, is it a concern that so much research, which is what we call evidence, never goes beyond publication?
I think that's a double edge because the generation of research means that people are engaged and they want to be part of solutions, so I think that's a good thing. I think enabling people to have a little bit of imagination and to sort of, perhaps your point, Marlena, about learning the skills, and that takes time. You're not going to become an instantly successful researcher overnight, no matter who you are or where you've come from. So I actually don't mind that approach. I think it's important that people do start to learn those skills. I think one of the things that, I'm sitting here also with an education hat on, is that what we can do is actually become much better at enabling the students coming through from the first year of their programs, whatever program that is, and start to have them exposed to the vernacular and the language and of research. So I'm not sure if I've answered the question, but I think it's okay that there is a lot of research out there. Maybe it hasn't been published necessarily, but I think of itself, it actually represents something quite powerful.
Yeah. Put your hand up if you would feel confident to critically read a paper and understand whether it was good quality or not. So it's actually more than... Wow. And thankfully 2 of our panellists as well. All right, so I'm honestly, it's higher than I thought it would be, which is fascinating, and maybe we're a slightly skewed sample in this room. But if we're not a skewed sample, that's a fantastic testament to the professionalism represented here. Marlena, in your talk, you had patients, relatives and families as part of the loop in terms of practice change and using evidence. Do you think we focus on evidence to the detriment of clinical expertise and patient preferences?
I think when we're thinking... Is that working?
Can people hear our panel?
Is that working? I hear it. Just press enough buttons and it works. I think that we're talking about evidence-based practice and we're thinking about clinical evidence, we're thinking about clinical expertise and patient values and preferences, all of those are important. I don't think that necessarily one is more important than the other, and I don't think that we should necessarily focus more extensively on one of those areas over the other. But what we do know increasingly over the last few years, if we're talking about patients and their family, is that it's really important for us to understand what their needs are. So we've actually found that a tremendous amount of research is wasted on topics that actually aren't relevant to consumers. So it is important that we actually have them centre and say, you know, for example, if we're talking about, I don't know, osteoarthritis of the knee, what's important for them is more around how can I get around without pain, rather than, you know, some other topic that researchers might think is important. So the role that consumers play is really critical in terms of the research questions that we ask, and that's likely to influence adoption. That's why we do all the co-design work now.
Yeah. Does anybody from the floor want to comment? I mean, you'd have to be brave, right? But does anybody from the floor want to extend on that or comment on their own experience there? I'm going to come back to you with more opportunities through this session. So that's your warm-up session on that. Look, we've talked a little bit about access and some of the challenges, but also some of the nuanced thinking that goes into that. We're going to move on to talk about stakeholders a little bit, because there was a group of questions really focused on really who is a stakeholder and how does that work if you want to be one but you're not yet in that, if you feel like you're out of the loop on implementation and you want in. So the first question was fascinating. Amanda, I think it was made for you. If somebody's a junior and they want to do evidence-based practice, how could they encourage buy-in from their more senior stakeholders and staff?
Wow. Okay.
Is this a common phenomenon?
Yeah, I think it is a common phenomenon.
That's
I think
awesome.
that we teach, the university programs are teaching the current education, the current format, the current knowledge, and then these students, and new grads essentially, novices, come into our organisation where, let's face it, if you haven't heard we've been doing it this way for 100 years, then you haven't worked in a hospital. And so then they are trying to influence and say things, and you hear it a lot, like students come in and go, well, we weren't taught that way at university, and they're teaching us this way because of X, Y, Z, and then they're sort of put on stop, I guess. For me, I think, when I think back to my early years as a nurse, your best resource is probably your education team. That's where your TLC is in terms of looking after the novice, understanding, having that thoughtful conversation and communication process, and using their leadership and their seniority to start influencing the rest of the team. It's really difficult to be a novice and have those conversations, so you need to use the people around you to help give you that confidence, and also or be your voice.
Yeah. If when you put your hand up for student, you're working at the RA, and Amanda's your EDON, I'd say you're very lucky. Can we extend from that though? So students come in, they've had a great undergraduate training experience, they've got a lot of knowledge, they know slightly different ways of doing things, so they might want to question something. What's the balance there between knowing a different way of doing things versus having or needing further maturity in terms of understanding organisational structure and organisational norms? Marlena, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I want to hear just a little more from Amanda.
I think that you need to, it's all about time, and it's about picking your time and picking your moment. So especially as a novice, you don't want to go in and try and change 10 people's different types of practices with I know better, because that's not going to serve you very well, let's face it. And how do you have those communication skills to actually be able to do it? So, but you don't also want to be practice that is non-evidence based and not what you were taught at university, because you know that's the right way to do things. And so you've got a job to do in terms of delivering the best possible care to your patients. So I think you've got to have that context of getting your orientation sorted, who's the who in the organisation, why do we do it this way? It's about understanding why it's done that way and why it's done that way here, and then what levers you can pull in terms of having that conversation about, did you know that X, Y, Z is happening? So I think it's a really, really challenging position to be in. And I think back to, you know, a time in my career where needles were not supposed to be capped, and I walked into an organisation and capping of needles had gone out, you know, 10 years before I got to that organisation, but they were still recapping needles. Now you can't go up to your senior nurse and say, don't recap needles, that's not evidence-based practice, that will not work. So it's about asking questions, but doing it in a clever, respectful way, and then finding out what's going on and what you can change and how you can influence with the knowledge you have.
Can I just add something there? Give up on that. Because interestingly, you talked about communication skill and everything about asking the right question and how you go. Is that something, like, I think that's really interesting, because we say people, these are the things you need to do, like the actual practice part that is evidence-based, but we don't really teach people how to communicate, not properly, but in a way that's going to end up, being able to change practice. So is that something that they're taught? I think it might be an area that we need to.
I think it's definitely something, graded assertiveness is something that we really need to focus on, both within the university context, within the healthcare context, in terms of how do you have a difficult conversation or a challenging conversation. Now that can be about research, that can be about care delivery, that can be about behaviour, but how do you have that difficult conversation when you're a novice? We all know, like, when you get into senior positions, how to do it, otherwise we wouldn't be in the senior positions. But how do you have that respectful, graded assertiveness to use acronyms like PACE, CRODEAM, asking questions, stopping things if you have to deliberately?
Because you raised it yours as well about asking the right questions and hearing stuff. I think it's just interesting that I think we need to perhaps focus a little bit more attention on developing our communication skills and styles.
There's been, I'm not sure if it's been rolled out here, but I know certainly in Victoria we had a Speaking Up for Safety campaign, and it was all about teaching those strategies, junior clinicians, senior clinicians, about how to actually have that conversation, because it is complex and nobody likes to know it all, and yet there are issues or situations where safety is a problem, and we should be able to speak up for safety, because a consumer could be your mum, dad, your sister, or whatever. So we actually went through a stage of a couple of years where everyone had to be trained on speaking up for safety, and it became a cultural thing at the hospital around how to do that in a way that was respectful. And just as you described, it's not going in and going, well, don't do that. It's why is this happening? What should be happening? And how can we improve on this?
That's a fascinating conversation. A quote I heard a little while ago was, "Don't come and tell me you want to change something unless you can tell me why we do it this way in the first place." And it's just an interesting way of thinking about being informed, which is so much of what you've been saying this morning. Frank, should more implementation projects, be multidisciplinary?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a thank you. That's an easy one. One of and I was just again commenting back from Marlena's talk, is that big business, what they do is they pilot innovations and they pilot and they essentially gain, or if you like, simulate policy changes, and then they look for the ripple effect of that before they go ahead and make the wholesale changes. So I think health itself as an entity has an opportunity to learn from those examples, and we can see that those big companies don't invest money and time and resource into significant change unless they've had a bit of a taster. So that we've heard the word pilot come through a few times now, and I think that's really powerful. So absolutely, and that has to be multidisciplinary in focus and application.
Yeah. Now, there's a number of people in the room who actually have wanted to drive implementation but haven't felt like they have the people around them to assist with that. And so this question, Marlena, should I go it alone if no one else seems interested? Or what else should I do?
I think, why don't I make it a hard question? I like that question. I think that in reality, that can actually happen. And it mightn't be that people aren't interested. There might be other reasons that they're saying no at this time. I think particularly right now, we've got a really tired workforce. And I think it's important to acknowledge, having come through the pandemic, not everyone has recuperated. So there might be an element of going, not now, or it might be about going, why? So I think you touched on that before. So why aren't people interested? I mean, it comes back to my earlier example when people said, oh, we don't do that around here. I had to find out why. And the why for that wasn't that they were scared of change. They actually didn't have the skills. So then we worked on that. Well, can we do this change by implementing this education program? So I think the first question that I would ask is why aren't people interested in this gap, this care gap that we've got, and maybe work from that level and then bring the team together.
Okay, thank you. That's pretty fascinating and a good way, I think, to finish up that section on stakeholders. So the next large group of questions that came through were all about sustainability, and we've heard some really interesting things on sustainability already this morning in terms of frameworks for it. Sustainability is partly cultural though, isn't it? So what are some this is to anyone. What are some strategies for building either a research or evidence-based culture? Yep, someone.
I'll jump in. I think we were talking about this just four of us this morning. I think it's partnerships. I think that's, for me, that's what it needs to come down to. I don't think any one unit or organisation can build that research culture on their own. I think it's about teaming up with appropriate people. If we have a look at today in this event, it's co-hosted by Caleb Nursing, by the school Adelaide School of Nursing, and by JBI, and I think that's a really unique partnership. And we were talking one that we would hope to strengthen and be able to continue to grow and develop and work together. I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want improved patient care, and I think we can do that better together.
Lots of nods. What about for you? Does that make sense for you? Lots of nods up here from the panel. Any comments from the floor? Yes, thank you. So just shout. You're just going to have to shout.
The JBI, I remember when it all started and we've got the practice sheets. I've been at the Carla all that time. We don't use their practice sheets. Why aren't their practice sheets part of our, or replace our original we write on the forms, for example, or a question? We might refer, if you're lucky, there might be a reference to the JBI, but quite often there's not. There's so much that we've got here on our doorstep that was developed on our site. And we don't use it, we don't use cases. It's disappointing when we talk about partnership, when you're here and you're part of us and we don't.
And you all have access as well, so that's the other thing too, is every single one of you have access to these resources. I think that's something for me is what I'm interested in understanding more is what are those challenges around accessing information and how can we make it easier and quicker, and so that it's at a touch of a button and not embedded in sell us 50 million clicks, not quite sure where to go, get wrong login, got your login, and go back in. Like, I think it's too complicated. I do remember the best practice information sheets. We used to print them out, and I'm a nurse as well, so I used to be on the little coffee tables and the chat, so the folders that we got there. But Craig mentioned before that there's huge resources in the JBI Equity database, the evidence summaries and our recommended practices. And it's not also just to say that they should replace, I don't think they should necessarily replace your existing processes, but they complement and should support that. So I'm very interested in understanding more around the challenges of accessing that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's a really good point. I was just sorry to add to that. If we make it a 5-step process to get something, it's gone. Nobody's got time to click through 5 different screens or go and find 5 different folders. That earlier example about asking the question, one of the other major problems was there was 12 options for a response. 12 options. And anything that's complex like that, we need to simplify it, to access the resources or get the right information quickly, because clinical decisions are made quickly, right? They're not, we don't have
15 minutes to go and source information. So I think, as you said, getting to the understanding, well, why and how then do we get that into the EMR, or where should that actually be so that our key stakeholders
We're
can
actually
access
doing
it?
a piece of work at the moment that is going to be looking at surveying a whole range of people. So I encourage you, if you get the email link, please click it and answer the questions. But the point of the survey is to really understand what the barriers are and enablers in accessing information. So it'll be useful. I'm really interested when we get to the 5 years side of things to see what.
Yeah. Our session after morning tea is all about beginning new partnerships. So I'm glad you asked that question. That's helpful in this context. We will take one more. Yeah, thank you.
Just more of an observation from previous experience. I was working as an agency nurse, and obviously flitting between different hospitals and different units, it was always something new every day. And I think the best experience I ever had walking into a ward was, what's your question today? And it wasn't just for consumers, it was actually aimed at staff. And they encouraged even the agency staff leaving for the day to question anything. It could be as simple as, why don't we have audio? Or it could be as complex as, why are we using X for wound care? Whatever the question was. And obviously I walked out, I wrote my question because I was encouraged to write a question. And I didn't expect to, 3 weeks later, be back at that unit for a start. But to then see my question up on the board, de-identified, but my question was there with an answer and then a suggested resolution. And then there was space for staff to then put in a resolution. And I think embedding that kind of question everything culture and making it inclusive would be such a great step, even for this organisation, to be able to implement at ward level, but also to implement that at a higher management level as well.
Yeah, that's very enabling, isn't it? That's a fantastic, that's slightly inspirational. All right, we can finish the day, we're done. Look, there's a lot of great questions here on sustainability. We've heard some stuff about it already this morning from Marlena. Amanda, with seemingly overwhelmed systems and people, how do we really make time and capacity for evidence-based practice?
I think it's about how you market and promote it. To be fair, I think that people see research as a nice to have, not as something that we do on the day-to-day, whereas it should be something that we do every day. And so I think it's about how you market it for, this is important for the patient. How does this help? What's the value proposition for the staff member delivering that? And then, ultimately, what's the value proposition for the organisation? Because that should come if the first two answers are met. And so, if you can market an evidence-based practice care type that is actually going to be better for the patient, more cost-effective, free up time for your clinicians, create a space where it's safe for them to have that discussion with the multidisciplinary team and create that collegiality, you're starting to tick all the boxes. It's not too dissimilar to how do you get uptake in digital technology. If it's easy and it works, people will use it.
If it's easy and it works, the people will use it. It's like these are critical pieces of feedback actually for everyone that's involved at a system level, aren't they? Because we're all meant to be working together to enhance and enable clinicians at the point of care. That's why we exist. So that's a fabulous comment. Frank, is there a role for undergraduate education and preparation for evidence-based healthcare? And if there is, what attributes should we be targeting?
So yes, there is, and we currently do that. We might not capture it as that level of language with students, because I think you're right, some students will hear the word research and turn off. So we do subtle things, like we might change the name of the course to be more about the outcome of sustained evidence-based patient care. And so we research by de facto, I suppose. The attributes, again, most students luckily come to university with a curious and inquiring mind anyway. And, we have some amazing educators at the school, and you see them generate and stimulate that curiosity. I think that's a key attribute. It's also amongst them as well as the people helping those students transition from an undergraduate to a graduate emphasis. And, you know, so I'm always thrilled and encouraged by the level of engagement that we have with that. I think the other attribute too is success, and you know, I've seen this before, perhaps we don't celebrate those unique successes as obviously and visibly as we could, because of all of the things perhaps that, you know, people in this room have done over their lifetime of contribution. Can they tease out that one beautiful, successful example and share that?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that we get that right, but we could do that better. So maybe those two attributes.
Kylie, a lot of time people talk about research or evidence-based practice, and they think they're talking about the same thing. Are they? Or is there a difference between research and evidence-based practice?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I mean, I think they're intertwined. I think research informs evidence-based practice, but isn't necessarily the same thing. So I think if you're looking at, and to be fair, you can frame it in a way to look like research. So if we're looking at you wanting to do evidence-based practice, you're wanting to deliver the best available care, that could be seen as, I guess, a quality improvement project where you're doing audit and feedback, but it could just as well as easily be framed into a research piece with a pre and post implementation. And I think that's, you know, when there's different sort of levels of how you can do research, and so I think being able to clearly articulate where those entry points are and how you can, I guess, move up through the research chain. So you might want to just start with a small project, not necessarily doing big research if that's what's going to put you off, or team up with people who can build those processes in, teach you a small audit quality improvement, but then teach you the skills to be able to broaden that out into a bigger piece of research. So I think it's both.
Bit of both there. Okay, that's interesting. I hope you're noticing your questions are coming through in all of this. We're going to move on to our next segment. It's the second to last segment. And there was a lot of questions on leadership and support. I'm going to start with a warmer-upper for you all, but this is for anyone. If I'm a clinician, what are some useful strategies for me to negotiate time to do evidence-based practice?
Go speak to Amanda.
Go.
Not sure. So there was a point in time when I was a clinician, and I was in the Royal Adelaide ICU, and this is just one small example. So we would have vials of propofol, and inevitably we would leave an amount in the vial once we've drawn up a syringe, and of course I thought, well, that seems like a waste, we're throwing away all of these excess parts of propofol. You know, so I went to the boss and I said, okay, look, can I have, and he said, okay, you've got 10 minutes, go. And no, he actually gave me more time than that. But it was actually then we just piloted a very simple intervention, and that was to look at better ways to use our medications when drawing up syringes. So we piloted that across a small number of staff, and was able to go back then to the NUM and say, okay, look, we can save, we think, X amount of dollars by drawing up medications this way. Can we do it? And of course that changed practice. So it was, I suppose it was about capturing the interest of the managers. Okay, where can I save a bit of money? How can I improve a standard of care? And again, it didn't have to be a big thing necessarily, but small steps, small wins.
Okay, that leads nicely into the next question. Marlena, start big and grand or scale up change across units over time? What's the advantages and disadvantages of either approach?
I think, and we talked about this with the earlier question around being able to start small and local and get some runs on the board. It's always good to go into something with some evidence. And I guess that there's less to lose if you start small. I think if we're talking about a grant proposition of a massive scale project, you'd really want to make darn sure that there's whatever you're scaling is absolutely clinically effective, and there is cause for that. There are some great implementation studies that are huge, that are multi-country, because the evidence base is so strong for that clinical intervention. But if we're right at the beginning, I'm all for the small wins. You know, I'm all for let's do things local, you know, get some runs on the board, get some small grants. You want to go in and say you've got some pilot data? That always looks good, you know, at a local level. You know, I've reviewed grants, and I'm always interested if people have, you know, already tested something and they're saying now we're going to go to the next phase. I'm actually a real fan, if we're talking about scale, of phased. Starting with something small, and the next phase will do this, and the next phase will do that. I think that's a really nice way of going about it, and it feels achievable.
Yeah. What's easier to get your head around, Amanda? Is it somebody that comes to you with the grand plan, or somebody that wants to work locally on something smaller scale?
I'm all about passion and enthusiasm, so I wouldn't say you need to have a grand plan. Just tell me why, what do I need to know to decide that I'm going to give the green light for this. And it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't need to affect more than one patient or more than one cohort of staff. For me, it's about, are we looking to improve? And I think that is the tenets of this organisation, in terms of we want to be world class and we want to do it with world class research, but ultimately we want to drive the best patient care outcomes, and for me that is down to absolutely everyone in this organisation, from the cleaner to the EDON to the CEO. So it's always good to have your elevator pitch ready, as Frank was just saying, having 10 minutes or a little bit longer with the boss. But you don't need a hell of a lot of time. You just need to say, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is how I think we can fix it. Can I have a little bit of time to go there? And generally speaking, you'll be given that provision.
You heard it. There we go. Now, you said green light. So speaking of green, what about greenbacks? What should I do differently if funds are needed for a practice change project? This is open question. No one wants to answer?
Well, I think it is. I think
It's
there's
a
a
tough
tremendous challenge in sourcing a small amount of funds anywhere. But if there are opportunities like, you know, a small pilot, then I would hope that most managers and CEOs and EDOMs and whoever else have a pot of funds that could lend itself to. So I would encourage people to, at the very least, ask the question. And then, you know, make sure you've got your researcher professional profile set up, and with all your alerts of new and innovative grant opportunities. There's a lot of those that appear on that website. I'm sorry if I talk about something people haven't heard. Are like for $1,000, and so it'd be a lovely way to sort of get some entry. Researcher professional is what it's called.
Yeah, I think added to that, I have no shame in partnering with organisations to get funding. So I know I've been able to fund small scale projects by partnering with universities who have other pockets of money, and get, you know, I've had projects that have started off with a couple of $1,000s to pay for interpreters, for example. And it's that old, you know, that old saying, the minute you get a bit of money, you seem to get a bit more money. So I'm happy to start small, and I'm happy to partner, and I've partnered with industry as well, and got funding in that way. So, you know, when I say there's, you know, no shame in looking around and seeing who can I partner with for this project, who might want to come on board, and that's often more palatable than to your managers if you say, well, hey, so and so are going to actually provide 4 of those STEM machines for me to be able to do this project. That tends to go down well.
So it sounds like, and something you said during your talk, Marlena, was sometimes it's yes but not now. You didn't use those exact words. Yes but wait. And that might tie nicely here in terms of thinking about partnerships. So the leadership that we work with can direct us toward opportunities where we partner with somebody. So maybe partnerships between clinicians and academics, clinicians and researchers. Because to go from an important idea with lots of passion, which is what Amanda's looking for, to then developing even a brief proposal That's a different skill set, isn't it? And so that's where we might see real value from partnerships. We've talked about partnerships in accessing evidence, in accessing tools and resources for practice change. But if we want to do something that might require some funding to underpin it, then, Kylie, does it just make sense to look for a partner before you go too far?
Yeah, I think we should be partnering on everything. I don't think you should be doing anything just as a sole person. So I think that there's exactly what we were talking about before. You're looking at all of our different skill sets and partnering together. It's just, and part of today as well is about networking to meet people who might be potential partners. So everyone in this room, we could all potentially be collaborating in a year, in 6 months, in a year's time.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't hurt to ask. Right?
absolutely not. Yeah.
I mean, the worst thing that happens is somebody says no. Who cares? Move on to the next person. So I think
Yeah.
asking for those partnerships and just going, could we, and what would this look like, is so important.
Yep. Professor Zoe Jordan's here. She holds the purse strings at JBI. So if you're staying for the network lunch after this, Zoe's wearing the burgundy dress and she's loaded. There was a question. There's a question up the back and I'd really love to hear.
I mean, another way that I found to look at it was to look at how you could save money, but I find it incredibly hard for us to gain access to financial information on what we actually spend per day, just on the cost of a bed per
Yeah.
night or all that sort of stuff. How do we get access to the financial information, which seems so complicated through MBS and everything else, so that we might be able to use that towards our research?
That's a seminar in itself, because I think clinicians are the last group to understand how to best and quickly access their own data. And I bet there's many a leader that stays awake at night worrying about things like that.
But
So
there are people
you've-
that can help with that. So
Yeah.
I had that question because I needed to cost something. It's really hard to find this data. This is around the NDIS. And there were these magic people that I found in the School of, was it Pop Health, at the university, who actually had access to AED data and all this stuff, as well as the skill set, because I'm not an epidemiologist, I don't know how to do that. So you can still partner with people who have that skill set, both with access to that type of information at a national or a state level, and also the ability to be able to interpret that information. So I can catch up with you later on and let you know I've got those other people.
I think there's that old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's all about who you know and who they know. So it's often 7 separations from you, but there's always a way. And it's about having that tenacity to find that way. And just in terms of writing briefs and getting funding, the partnership's crucial in terms of these guys know how to write a brief. In fact, I get my learnings from how they write their documents myself at this level. So you utilise them to write your briefs. You keep it short, you keep it snappy, and people will read them. You give them the check, I guess, or the test is in the title. It's a brief, right? So if it's a good idea, people will use it and it's going to win for the patients. People will read it. Keep it short, meaningful, and get it to the right person and use the resources around you. And if they don't know, they will know somebody, and it might be a couple of phone calls, but if you've got that tenacity, you'll get it done.